My name is Zeal. In the vast, charted reaches of the galaxy, my kind are known as the Giants. I am a scion of the High Scholars. My biology, a map of 4 arms and 4 eyes, designed for the mapping of stars and the cooling of logic. My heartbeat is a steady, rhythmic pulse. Or it should be. Beside me stood Wade. He was leaning against a coolant conduit that thrummed with a low-frequency vibration I found unsettling. He was idly tossing a small, rusted piece of earth metal, a coin, into the air. Snap, clink, snap. The sound was a metronome of human restlessness, grating against the silence of the bridge. "You should be in the gravity couch, Wade," I said, my vocal chambers clicking with a sharp edge of irritation. "The transit shift is fluctuating. The ship's spatial stabilizers are compensating for a 3% variance in the local fold. Your skeletal structure is delicate. By the standards of the hegemony, you are a porcelain figurine." Wade didn't look at me. His one good eye remained fixed on the spinning metal. Snap. "My bones are doing just fine, Zeal. Your ship feels like a breeze. Back home, just standing up feels like carrying a second person on your shoulders. Here, I feel like I might float away if I don't keep a thumb on the world." "A mudball perspective," I countered, adjusting my secondary lenses to focus on his clouded eye. "Your planet is a statistical anomaly of crushing pressure and primitive survival. You are a ghost in our system, Wade, an unarmored, unaugmented cipher. You shouldn't even be able to stand upright in this sector's ambient pull." Wade finally looked at me, a slow, lopsided grin pulling at his scarred cheek. It wasn't a friendly expression. It was the look of a man who knew a joke I wasn't allowed to hear. Maybe, but sometimes ghosts are the only ones who can see what's coming in the dark. He caught the coin, but this time he didn't toss it back up. He froze. His nostrils flared, scenting the recycled air with a predatory intensity that made my secondary heart skip. "The air's changing, Zeal. Can't you feel it? The ionization? It smells like burnt sugar." I checked my primary sensors. The holograms were steady, glowing a cool, logical blue. Atmospheric readings are nominal. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace argon, all within hegemony safety parameters. You are experiencing sensory ghosts, a common side effect of— "The sensors are lying to you, Wade," interrupted, his voice dropping to a low, gravelly rasp. He stepped away from the conduit, his boots hitting the deck with a heavy, deliberate thud that seemed to echo too long. Something just took a bite out of the ship's pressure curtain. Listen. I strained my auditory sensors. Silence. There is nothing, Wade. Only the— Then I heard it. A sound that shouldn't exist in deep space. A rhythmic— The emergency caption didn't just appear. It screamed across the localized UDs in a jagged, bleeding red. "Emergency. Structural integrity failure. Hold reach in 3, 2. "Nominal, huh?" Wade grunted. He didn't move for the safety harnesses. He did the opposite. He moved into the center of the deck, planting his feet wide, his knees slightly bent, as if he were bracing to hold up the ceiling. "Wade, get back! The maglocks!" I shouted, my forearms scrambling for the emergency controls. "The pressure differential will liquefy you. Your lungs will—" "Zeal, shut up and hold on to the console," Wade commanded. His voice had dropped an octave, vibrating in the floorboards. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an apex predator's bark. The hole didn't just break. It vanished. The scream was the worst part, the sound of the universe trying to suck the soul out of the ship. A whiteout of frost and debris blinded my 4 eyes. I felt the maglocks on my lower arms groan as the vacuum tried to pull me into the black. Through the freezing fog, the shadows came, Krell marauders. They didn't use doors, they used breaches. They were nightmares of matte black plating and multi-jointed limbs, drifting through the decompression with the ease of sharks in water. Their thermal blades hissed, glowing a malevolent orange in the mist. I reached for my gravity mace, but my movements were sluggish, hampered by the very physics I trusted. The Krell were faster. One vaulted over a navigation bank, its blade leveled at my primary throat. I was a scholar. I was a mapmaker. I was dead. The impact never came. Wade had moved. In this low-gravity environment, the human didn't just step. He launched. He crossed the deck in a blur that my 4 eyes could barely track. He intercepted the Krell midair, not with a weapon, but with his body. He caught the glowing thermal blade by the hilt guard with his bare hand. I heard the sizzle of his flesh, a sound that should have ended in a scream. Instead, Wade let out a low, guttural growl that drowned out the roar of the escaping air. "You're in the wrong house," Wade said, The words were a vibration in the metal, felt rather than heard. With a sickening crunch of reinforced chitin, Wade's other fist, a dense, unaugmented hammer of bone and muscle, slammed into the Krell's faceplate. He didn't just break the mask, he drove the alien's own visor through its skull. The Krell's head didn't shatter, it collapsed inward as if hit by a falling moon. Wade didn't stop. He used the dead Krell as a shield, spinning in the vacuum wind to face the other three. His silhouette was a jagged shadow against the stars, looming massive in the emergency strobes. The Krell, creatures who had raided 1,000 worlds, actually paused. They saw a being with no armor, bleeding from a charred hand, standing in a vacuum that should have turned his blood to ice, and they felt a primal, evolutionary terror. He's a monster, I whispered, my forearms trembling against the console. Wade didn't look back, but his shoulders bunched like coiled steel cables. No, Zeal, he said, his voice cutting through the roar of the breach like a blade. I'm just a human, and you're standing on my floor. He lunged. It wasn't a fight, it was a kinetic slaughter. He moved with a terrifying weight. His every movement carried the momentum of a species born under a crushing sun. When he hit a Krell, the sound wasn't a strike, it was a structural failure. He grabbed the last marauder by its primary limbs and simply pulled. The sound of tearing metal and meat filled the bridge. The emergency seals slammed shut. The roar died. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating, save for the frantic hiss of the life support and the wet drip of alien ichor hitting the floor. Hours later, the grand chamber of the High Scholars was silent. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the fear of the elite. He didn't use the lever? Arch Scholar Vax asked, his secondary lenses twitching. He simply overpowered the hydraulic joints of a Krell exosuit? He didn't just overpower them, Arch Scholar, I replied, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. I keyed in the data from the bridge sensors. The sensors recorded a peak output of 12,000 newtons. His muscle fibers didn't tear, they tightened. His bones are not just calcium. They are a high-density composite forged by 1 billion years of fighting a gravity well that would flatten us in seconds. And the thermal burn? Vax asked, pointing to the footage of Wade's blackened palm. He refused the sedative, I said. He told me it wasn't deep enough to complain about. His biology processes pain as a tactical alert, not a deterrent. We have spent centuries looking for the giants of the universe, Arch Scholar. We were looking for height. We should have been looking for mass. I found Wade in the medbay, sitting on the edge of a biobed. The room was dim, the only light coming from the flickering diagnostic screens. He looked smaller here, his head bowed, his heavy shoulders slumped. The scholars are calling you a Class 0 Apex, I said softly, my 4 feet clicking quietly on the tiles. Wade looked up. His good eye was bloodshot, weary in a way that had nothing to do with the fight. Is that the new word for beast? It is a word for something we cannot control, I replied. I sat on the bench opposite him, maintaining a distance I hadn't realized I was keeping. I am terrified of you, Wade. I watched you break a Krell elite with your bare hands. You didn't even use a tool. You were the tool. Wade looked at his bandaged hand, the white gauze already spotting with dark blood. Back on Earth, we have a lot of tools, Seal. But when the lights go out, and the air stops, and the walls start screaming, tools break. All you've got left is the weight of your own skin. He stood up, and the medbay seemed to shrink. The 6.9-foot frame of the porcelain figurine now felt like an unexploded shell. He walked over to me, and for a moment I wanted to flee. He placed his uninjured hand on my primary shoulder. The weight of it was staggering. It wasn't just the physical pressure. It was the sheer, crushing presence of him, a living monument to a world that tried to kill him every single day. It's not just the gravity, Zeal, he whispered, his eye locking onto all 4 of mine. It's the memory. My world is a graveyard of things that thought they were faster or smarter than us. I'm not a giant. I'm just the one who wouldn't stay down. He walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing like a drum through the ship's spine. At the threshold, he paused. Get some rest, Tiny. Tomorrow, you can go back to measuring the stars. I'll stay awake for the things that live between them. I watched him go, the heavy thrum of his footsteps vibrating through my own bones. For the first time, I didn't feel like a giant. I felt like a leaf, drifting in the wake of a storm that had graciously decided not to break me.